Uh, so my understanding or my learning from the second chapter, if you is okay, let me try to summarize in as brief manner as possible. At the end of the first chapter, Arjuna is pretty clear about what is his decision. I mean, there is no ambiguity in his mind of what he needs to do. And so he's pretty clear in what he wants to do, saying that this war is not meant for me. I mean, I don't need to participate in this war, and this war is not going to give me any dividend. It's only going to give me further sorrow, and preferable to walk away. So that is where the first chapter ends, and the beginning of the second chapter is when there is a reality check being brought in by Sri Krishna, saying that Klaibyamma Smagam of Partha, I mean, you can't behave like this, and there's a reality check that is being brought out by Krishna. I think that shakes Arjuna a bit. So what happened to be a Dhrida Nischaya seems to get shaken there, and a sort of confusion creeps in into his mind. Is what I decided, is it really right or not? So he thinks, then he says, he starts realizing that he is in a problem. On one hand, he thinks what decision he has taken is right, and maybe, and Krishna is saying that no, it's not a right decision. A sort of confusion is creeping into his mind, and now this confusion needs to get resolved. And so there's a problem. There's a problem that he's facing as to, am I right? Am I wrong? What Krishna is telling, is it right or is it wrong? What is the right thing to be done? So there's a confusion. So in one of the talks of Swami Paramarthananda, he says for any problem resolution, there are 5 distinct steps that need to happen. One is you need to recognize there is a problem. Second, you try to solve the problem with your competency, with whatever tools you have. Third, you recognize that you are incompetent. Fourth, you recognize that you need to seek help and identify the person from whom you seek help. And the last step is you surrender to that person. And blindly follow whatever that person says. And that typically happens even when you have a medical issue. You get a fever, you think you can solve the problem, where you take some paracetamol and all that, right? And then the fever doesn't go away. Then you start recognizing that you don't have the tools or techniques to solve the problem on your own. Then you identify a doctor and you blindly follow the doctor. You don't question the doctor. I think the same 5 steps are being enunciated here also. So Karpanya Dosho Pahata Swabhava is that final surrender that Arjuna says that, okay, I have a problem. I am incompetent of solving this problem on my own. And I mean, you happen to be the nearest guru available to me. So I'm surrendering to you. I will listen to whatever you say. Though one thing at the back of the mind we need to keep is both these people, both Sri Krishna and Arjuna, are close to about 80 years old. It's not that they are 30-year-old people. They have had their entire life of following dharma and doing karma and all that. So 80-year-old people, they come with their own huge baggage of experience. So Arjuna is not a novice in that sense. So he's a pretty learned man and a pretty experienced man. And in the stage of confusion, he's now asking for a resolution. So the remaining, I mean, I'm only talking of one portion of what I would call as Laukika, this thing, what is relatable at a very, very basic level. Sri Krishna tries to first describe the problem, and he gives a prescription for the problem at a very Laukika level. I'm not getting into the Adhyatmika level at all. So he says the problem starts with only one thing: me, mine, and myself. I think that's how he describes the problem there. Whatever you think as me, mine, and myself is the source of your problem. And he uses a couple of shlokas to define that the me, mine, and myself statement. First, he starts off with me is, he brings in the shloka from 234, 235, 236. I'll just read it down. Again, give me a minute. Like the first set of the problems comes from your understanding of yourself, that you are a great person. So he is doing he's poking his ego, saying that Akirtim chapi bhutani kata ishyanti tevayam sambhavitasya chakirtim. So what will others think about you? So he's trying to poke, saying that your image of yourself is going to get derided when you do all this. So 234, 235, 236 he brings in. He also starts off with the 2.2 Clybium Smagam of Partha. So he's defining that problem, saying that what is your impression of yourself is one of the source of your problem. So you want to maintain your image, and the maintenance of the image is the cause of your problem or cause of your sorrow. The second thing is talking about likes and dislikes that you keep accumulating likes and dislikes. That is another cause of the problem. Jayate vishayan pumsaha sangaste shupajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. So 262 and 263 is the source of your problem, because you're always tuned to the external world, and that external world is influencing you so much, and you keep accumulating those desires which are being fed through your sense organs. So 263 and 262 and 263, and what you become myself, he actually defines in 267. In 267 he makes this statement saying that because you are governed by all these senses, this senses will take you away. Indriyanam hi charatam yenmano nu vidiyate tadasya harati pragnam ayurnavam imambasi. Now you are without any support. You are just floating on as it comes and as it goes. You are going along with the flow. You have no control over yourself. So this is what he is using it to describe what causes the problem. So basically he is describing the problem of me, mine, and myself. Then he comes out with the prescriptions. To solve the problem. So the first prescription he gives is in 2.14. He says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkha daha agama apayino nityaha tam titikshasva bharata. So he says that please recognize that what is coming and what is going is transient. So this is one of the fundamental axioms, like Professor Krishnamurti in his book says that this is the fundamental axiom of Vedanta, or maxim of Vedanta. He says that everything in life is transient. So don't get attached to anything that is transient. Point number one. Point number two, he says that the only way you can overcome is to bear the titiksha. So the first solution he is giving is try to bear what is coming to you, what is happening to you. Try to develop forbearance to what is happening to you. Then the next step he says that, okay, first you have learned to understand as to how to bear this, then try to look at it at a slightly different level and say that everything is the same. Because what is sukha, what is dukkha? Dukkha is absence of sukha. Sukha is absence of dukkha. Right? It is dvanda. So treat both of them as equal, which he mentions in 238. He mentions this in 238 as सुखदुःखे समे कृत्वा लाभालाभौ जयाजयो ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्व नैवं पापम अवाप्स्यसि. So he says start treating everything as the same. First he says the first step for you to do is to start trying to develop forbearance. Second step is you start looking at both of them as the same. Then the third step he says that once you started recognizing both of them as the same, third step you take the next higher step and curtail their influence on you. How do you curtail their influence on you? Is in 258. He brings in this shloka of Yada sammadate chayam kurmongani va sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyah tasya prajna pratishtita. So don't allow them to influence you any further, and you feel that their influence is overpowering you. Become the kurma. Withdraw all your sense organs and try to get rid of their influence, right? And after that he says that once you learned how to face them. Second, you learned how to treat them equally. Third, you learned how to control their influence on you by withdrawal. And the fourth step he says that throw away these desires. Now you have gained mastery over them. It's easy for you to throw away these desires, which he says is prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmanah tushtaha sitaprajnas tadochate. So he says that now you can throw away your desires, right? You've got complete mastery over your desires, and all this will lead to permanent peace when these desires are thrown away, which he summarizes in 271. Vihaya kamani sarvan pumams charati nispraha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adhigacchati. So the prescription and the description as how it flows for a person who doesn't want to get involved in Adhyatma at a very, very basic level. How does it flow? I mean, this is what I mean. Dhanyawada. I hope I made sense.
Yeah, so myself. So that was the original diagnosis of the problem, and then solutions given by the various shlokas that you mentioned. Ending with Yesha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapti Vimuktati Sthitvasya Mantakalepi Brahma Nirvanam Richyati. Yeah, a good ending to that chapter. So, yeah, good presentation, Narayanji.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm sorry I didn't spend a lot of time preparing for this. So I'm not going to be as articulate as Narayananji, but and like some of the other Sahapatis have already expressed, every shloka in this chapter is a gem, and it's very difficult to pick a few to talk about. But there have been a few shlokas that have spontaneously come to memory during the course of my life, like after I started studying the Gita, and they would just spontaneously come to me on certain occasions when I was facing certain situations. So I decided to talk about 3 of those shlokas. The first one is verse 14, which Narayananji just spoke about as well. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agamapayino nityaha tan stitikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the contact between the senses and their objects, which give rise to the feelings of heat and cold, pleasure and pain, are transitory and fleeting. Therefore Arjuna, endure them. So the fact that this is natural, right? The contact of the sense organs with the sense objects generates these feelings, but that they are agamapayanaha, they will come and go. That itself gives us the confidence that everything shall pass, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, it is eventually going to pass. Especially when we're facing difficult situations, I feel like I get a lot of strength from the shloka, that it too shall pass, this too shall pass. And another profound insight we had discussed in class for this shloka was that pain does not equate to sorrow. So there is pain, but without an intermediate step, which is asking this question, why is this happening to me, or something like that, making this about yourself, is what causes the sorrow that follows the pain. And I have actually, there were occasions where I actually tried this out, where when you have pain, if you don't ask those questions and you just observe the pain, it just becomes a throbbing and eventually slowly dissolves and goes away. So I think even like this is, I'm talking about physical pain, but I'm sure even about emotional pain, there have been some situations where I've always also felt that, where if I didn't start bringing emotions in, I could deal with what was happening. But when you bring the emotions in is when the sorrow happens or the sadness comes in, and that makes it more difficult to handle. So as long as that why me mindset does not kick in, we can focus our energy and attention on handling the pain without becoming sad. So this was the first shloka I wanted to talk about. The second one is verse 16. Na sato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drishtontaha, tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. The unreal has no existence and the real never ceases to be. The reality of both has thus been perceived by the seers of truth. This shloka analyzes existence and non-existence. Here we had used our favorite pot and clay example to appreciate and connect with the profundity of this shloka. Here again, and we had talked also about the 3 orders of reality: Sat, Asat or Mithya, and Tucham. So Sat refers to independent existence. Asat or Mithya refers to dependent existence, and Tucham is non-existence. In our pot and clay example, clay was Sat, pot is Asat because pot's existence is dependent on clay. Clay was there before the pot was born, and when the pot dies, clay continues to exist. Reflecting on this example helps us understand the statement Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya as well, because Brahman is the entity just like the clay that existed before Jagat was born, and Brahman is both the Nimitta Karanam as well as the Upadana Karanam, which is the intelligent cause as well as the material cause for Jagat. So Jagat has therefore no independent existence without Brahman. Thus Jagat is Mithya. When Jagat dissolves, it dissolves into Brahman, which continues to exist. Just as when the pot dies, it dissolves or devolves into clay. Just visualizing this pot and clay example and using it as a template for reflecting on the relationship between Brahman and Jagat, I felt was a very powerful exercise for internalizing the nature of Sat and Asat, which in turn helps us develop a good understanding of, helps us develop Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. Right. In fact, the shlokas following this, I think from after shloka 16 up to 24 or so, they elaborate on how Satya is Nityam and Asat is Anityam. So that was the second shloka. The third shloka I wanted to talk about was one of my favorites, has been a favorite since childhood days. I'm sure this is for a lot of us because we memorized it from watching Mahabharata. So this is verse 47. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana I lost my place here. Sorry, just a second.
Ma karma phalahetur
Ma karma phalahetur bhuhu mate sangostva karmani. Okay. Mate sangostva karmani. So this is the shloka we all grew up memorizing by knowing by heart. And when I first learned about this shloka, I had misunderstood it as we have the right or the choice to our action, or to act according to our desire, but we have no right over the result that we get as a result of our actions. That we have no right to expect a certain result out of that action. I felt that it was like we had no right. It felt more fatalistic, and that it was a decree that we were supposed to abide by. But it was like, I felt like in our discussions, Jay Kumarji, when you actually properly interpreted it, I felt like this was demystified for me. It felt like a eureka moment when you brought our attention to the fact that this is actually stating an existential fact. It's not like a decree or anything. This is a fact because the result of an action is not the outcome of just the action, but there are a lot of laws operating as well that we are unaware of. Right. So the action is happening in the context of a lot of laws, like, just like there are physical laws, magnetism and photosynthesis and all these, there are laws operating in the universe constantly, in the context of which your action is producing a result. So without having control, to have 100% control, you have to have control over the laws as well as the action, which we don't have, right? We can, at the most, if we are aware of the laws, then we can probably tune our action in such a way that we can maximize a certain result. But so I felt like this got demystified, and it's like, this is like a mathematical equation, right? More than like a decree that you have to abide by, so you don't get hurt or something like that. So this is like one of my favorites. So yeah, basically that there are a number of factors beyond our action that influence the result that comes out of it. And so we cannot expect that just our action is going to produce a result unless we have control over the field in which it is producing an output. So those were the 3 shlokas that I wanted to talk about. Sorry if I made any mistakes or any misinterpretation here, but thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, good presentation, Bhagya. So matra sparshastu kaunteya. So that tells us that the nature of experience is like this. Sense organs
Yes.
are there, and the sense organs, their job is to feel. Their job is to tell us, give us the data, and the data can be heat, cold, etc. And the data pain also is a type of symptom that the body has to feel. Otherwise the body would be flawed. The creation of the body would be flawed. We will not be aware of the pain, and then that would cause problems. So therefore, that you already mentioned, pain is not the same as sorrow. So that acceptance of pain is a very big step in our journey here. And asato vidyate bhavaha. So important shloka. Shankaracharya, like he wrote for Brahmarpanam Brahmavihi, he writes also several 2.5 pages on this shloka also. And so that's an important shloka. Satya and Nitya. So that Nityatvam of the Jagat is expressed in that shloka. We have an opportunity to learn that through the shloka. And Karmanyavadikaraste, yeah. So popular translations are misleading, generally misleading. So you cannot expect, do not expect anything. This is a popular translation.
Yep.
So that is not correct. Mandopi na pravartate prayojanam anuddishya. Even the most so-called dumb person we talk about, dull-witted person, cannot, has an expectation. Even the madcap has an expectation. He or she, whatever they do, is it comes with an expectation. Therefore, expectation is not the problem. How I deal with missed expectations, shall we say? How I deal with expectations that are not met, unmet expectations. That is
Binding versus non-binding desires.
yeah, exactly. So good. Yeah, thanks, Bhagya. That's all, no, Vijay, for today?
Yes, that's all for today. Only 2 of them.
Okay, good. Vasudevaya Dhanvantaraye Amritakalasahastaye Sarvamaya Vinashanaya Trailokyanathaya Shri Mahavishnave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhanvantaraye Amritakalasahastaye Sarvamaya Vinashanaya Trailokyanathaya Shri Mahavishnave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhanvantaraye Amritakalasahastaya Sarvamaya Vinashanaya Trailokyanathaya Shri Mahavishnave Namaha. Yeah, those who want to stay back and meet.
Thank you.